Judge Prescott thought he could silence Pam Bondi with a fine, but he never expected her to dismantle his entire argument. The courthouse in Tampa, Florida, had seen its fair share of legal battles, but on this particular morning, no one could have predicted the storm that was about to unfold. Pam Bondi, sharp as ever, stepped through the heavy wooden doors, briefcase in one hand, the other adjusting the lapel of her blazer. She was here for what should have been a routine hearing, one she could argue in her sleep. As she made her way to the defendant's table, she felt the judge's eyes on her. Before he even spoke, Judge Alan Prescott, a man known for his no-nonsense demeanor, was staring not at her face, but at something just below. Her collarbone, a simple gold cross. The air in the courtroom shifted. A quiet stillness enveloped the room. Then, in a tone as sharp as a gavel strike, Prescott cleared his throat and leaned forward. "Miss Bondi, I must remind you that religious symbols have no place in my courtroom." Pam barely blinked. "Your Honor, you're wearing a cross. That violates the neutrality of the space. You'll need to remove it or face a fine." A murmur rippled through the few spectators in attendance. The bailiff shifted uncomfortably. The clerk darted a glance at the judge, then back at Pam. This wasn't the first time a judge had tried to assert control over his courtroom in an unusual way, but it was the first time anyone had thought to fine a lawyer over a necklace. Pam didn't move. "I'm sorry, Your Honor, but my cross is no different than a wedding ring or a locket with a family photo inside." Judge Prescott's face remained unreadable. "That's not how I see it." He sighed, already growing tired of the discussion. "Either remove it, or I'll have to issue a fine for disregarding courtroom neutrality." For the first time in her career, Pam Bondi found herself fined not for misconduct, not for a procedural violation, but for wearing a piece of jewelry. The fine wasn't the issue. It was what it represented. She didn't take off the cross. Instead, she folded her hands over her briefcase, her expression cool. She wasn't about to let this go. "Your Honor, before we continue, I'd like to address this issue formally." Judge Prescott raised a brow. "Address it?" "Yes, I'll be filing an objection and would like to state my argument on record." The judge smirked, glancing at the clock on the wall. "Miss Bondi, I'm sure you're aware that this hearing is about a business dispute, not your personal grievances." Pam didn't flinch. "I'm also aware that the First Amendment doesn't take a recess for personal opinions." That got his attention. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing slightly. The court reporter's fingers hovered over her keyboard. The room was now on edge, not because of a legal battle over a contract, but because a seasoned attorney had just challenged a judge's authority to his face. "Fining me for wearing a cross. Let's break that down legally, shall we?" The judge exhaled, rubbing his temples. But before he could respond, Pam was already reaching into her briefcase. She wasn't just going to argue. She was about to dismantle his entire premise. Judge Prescott didn't realize just how deep of a hole he had started, digging for himself. Pam pulled out a single sheet of paper from her briefcase, placing it carefully on the table in front of her. She didn't rush. Every movement was deliberate. Every second of silence, another tightening of the tension in the room. "Judge Prescott," she began, her voice steady, her tone unwavering. "I don't have time for theatrics." "Neither do I, Your Honor," she continued, locking eyes with him. "But what I do have is a firm understanding of constitutional law." The judge leaned forward, fingers laced together, as if bracing for whatever was coming next. "You're fining me for wearing a cross, claiming it violates courtroom neutrality. But tell me, Your Honor, what legal precedent are you basing that on?" The room was silent. The court reporter's fingers hovered over the keys. The bailiff barely shifted in his seat. Judge Prescott let out a slow breath. "This courtroom operates under my authority, Ms. Bondi." Pam nodded. "It does. But that authority is not above the Constitution." She tapped the paper in front of her. "Under the First Amendment, personal, religious expression is protected, especially when it does not disrupt proceedings." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Judge Prescott's jaw tightened. Pam tilted her head slightly, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. "Now, Your Honor, would you like to proceed with the fine? Or shall we take this to a higher court?"